you, Scarlett?
I'm here. I'm a little
Me too.
congested.
We are here right now.
Here we are right now. Just slightly congested, but that's all right. Um, I'm excited to be back. I love our podcast.
I love our podcast too. Hey, our podcast is getting lots of listens, and even people are giving me feedback and even asked a question.
Hey, do we get to answer the question?
Well, it's a big question, so we'll talk
Uh,
about it a little bit, but we might not answer it all the way.
well,
Um,
the question's in the form of an answer. It's it's never done.
right? So today we're talking about Gandanta. Between the worlds, the liminal space, between breaths, cosmic knots, fire and water threshold. So let's talk about Gandanta zones in Vedic astrology. And the reason why we're talking about this is Venus just went through the Gandanta, and Mars is about to go through the Gandanta. So
That's
let's break
right.
it down. What is WTF is Gandanta? Um, do you want to start or shall I?
Well, here, why don't I give some foundational information and then I'll let you explain the concept. So, um, in the in Vedic astrology, some of this is familiar also in Western astrology, that's not the point. But in Vedic astrology, we recognize the place as a zone, the borderlands, so to speak, in between water signs and fire signs as a Gandanta zone. The water sign is always the end of 1/3 of the chart, and this gets to be too complicated to explain fully, but we started to allude to these patterns, right? We started to allude over the course of these podcasts that there's many, many patterns that are predictable and repeatable in these charts that we look at. So one of those patterns is that the last sign in a certain phase, as we could call it, is water. And then when it starts over, we were talking about the nakshatras cycle starting in a fire sign, like Aries is number one, starts with Ketu ruled nakshatra. And then it goes all the way, so from Aries to Pisces, that ends, Aries to Cancer, that's a fire sign, all the way to a water sign. Then it starts again in Leo, a fire sign, all the way through Scorpio, a water sign. Then it ends and starts again with Sagittarius, fire, and ends in Pisces. So where water meets fire, those elements don't mix. And
Mm-hmm.
the few degrees, or the last pada, the last nakshatra, if you want to think of it that way, but there's a few degrees on either side, a few degrees in the water, a few degrees in the fire, where things are kind of mixing together. We call this a Gandanta, and it's actually like the untying of a karmic knot.
Mm-hmm.
And I will
So,
pass it back to you.
so,
Take the
so from
baton.
right,
Take the
so
baton.
from the Sanskrit, ganda means knot, Knot, a knot, a tied up knot, and anta means the end. It's the ending knot. And it's also important to note that at these junctures between water and fire signs that happen 3 times, this is where there's no crossover of the star signs between the signs. It's the only place that it happens where star signs meet at a hard stop between the signs. So there's this hard stop meeting between fire and water. From Pisces to Aries, these are Revati and Ashwini nakshatras meeting. Between Cancer and Leo, these are Ashlesha and Magha meeting. Between Scorpio and Sagittarius, these are Jesta and Mula nakshatras meeting. And right here is this incompatible yet deeply transformative and alchemical meeting of fire and water, which creates steam and pressure and transformation. The Gandanta is where karma tightens and then it releases. And so a Gandanta in real life can feel like emotional flooding. It could feel like spiritual burnout. It could feel like identity crisis. There could be insomnia. There could be fever dreams. When planets move through Gandanta, we might lose relationships, we might lose career, we might lose our roles or our labels. Even time stops making completely linear sense. This is the liminal zone. It is psychic and it is very sacred. So this is up now. We also need to, and I'll pass it back over. We need to talk about the so every sign has a different element associated with it, and they go in a cycle of fire, earth, air, water, three times around the zodiac. But at the most cardinal, the most fundamental level of this kind of train of thought is the juxtaposition, and perhaps it is a human universal ish, just in terms of like, I'm really interested in human evolution, of the juxtaposition between that which is hot and that which is wet, fire and water, Agni and Soma, right? And our relationship with fire as a species, which is unique. No other species handles fire the way that we do, dates to
Not
at
yet.
least, not yet,
Not yet.
good job, dates to at least 3.5 million years. So this is this sacred paradox of fire and water, which are fundamental to the human experience. No water, no life. And certainly we are dependent upon our relationship um, with the element, the demon, the two-faced uh, energy of Agni, who is has one face that is creation and one face that is destruction. So that was a lot of things that I just said.
That was a lot of things that you just said. And it's not, I mean, we are just putting together lots of different things each time, but little tidbits will come out. And I've had a few people say, oh, I listened to the podcast and I didn't understand, but I'm sure other people do. And I, you're not supposed to hear this and understand all of it for the first time. That would be crazy. That would be like if you went to Justine's yoga class and you had the same level of skill and expertise doing yoga asana as Justine does, even though you'd never done it and she's been practicing professionally for her entire adult life almost every day. It's like, why would you come and listen to this podcast and expect to know as much as we do? That's not that's not the point. That's not the point. That's not the point. The point is to hang around and slowly but surely hear things, and as they repeat you get new neural pathways and you form new memories, and then you start to connect the dots, and that's how you learn anything, right? So one of the things, and we like to say you have to repeat something 108 times before it sticks. So we have to record a lot of podcasts before a dedicated listener would even be expected to have something as esoteric as this stick in their mind, right? But one of the things that you can start to stick, and sometimes facts just leap out and you remember them because they're interesting. So here's an interesting fact about the elements, which is that fire is the only element that can make more of itself.
Right.
And just let it, like, hold a little bit of space around that. Fire can make more of itself. You can have some earth, you can have a piece of wood, and you can expose it to the fire element. Is this a little bit like rock, paper, scissors ish, right? You can expose it to the fire element, and the earth element can turn into fire. You can put a pan of water on top of an open fire, and the water will turn from being a liquid into a gas, right? It's like, that doesn't really turn it into fire, but it can transform water. It can transform the elements, and it can also turn things into itself. So fire is kind of unique in its capabilities. And I just thought I would mention that as a kind of a side fact, because as we talk more about Ayurveda, you'll hear us refer to Agni in terms of digestive fire or digestive capacity. And we haven't given people too much of the Ayurveda in this podcast yet, but when we talk about Agni or the principles of Agni inside the body, what we're really talking about is our miraculous ability as a species to ingest a solid food and then transform it into nutrition and energy inside our bodies, right?
And also, our digestion is quite literally, in terms of our evolution, linked to our harnessing of fire. Our whole
Mm-hmm.
digestive tract is dependent and entirely different than other species because we harness when as Homo habilis, we possibly Homo erectus, we harnessed fire, which completely changed our digestion.
Yeah.
And in
And
Vedic thought, Agni is the messenger, the transformer, and the archetype or the mythic character of Agni. He digests offerings and then transmits them to the gods. He represents consciousness and will and discernment, and also tapas or austerity,
interesting. This one
right?
is going to be like a secondary tangent, and I don't want to take us down this path completely. But just as like a side note, coming into the conversation more as people who learn and study, practice, offer Ayurveda, is ingredients are important, but speaking of fire, the way that you cook them, the temperature at which you consume them, and the state of being in which you digest them is more important than what they are. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You could
Yes.
eat a raw onion and you could eat a cooked onion, and they're not going to taste the same, they're not going to look the same, they're not going to feel the same, they're not going to move the same way through the body, and they're not going to come out the same way. So it's
Right.
really the external fire, the cooking, the internal fire, the digestion is what decides what you get out of that, not the plant itself. Anyway, that's not the
And
point of this conversation, but it's
but
important that we just.
it's important. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we're talking about these fundamental juxtapositions, we just talked a lot about fire. We then have to talk about the wet, the water, or at its elevated register, soma, the nectar of immortality, the cooling lunar essence, which was harvested and imbibed by the gods. And this is the receptive, ecstatic and fluid concept. And it is soma. It comes into the word somatic. It's where we're deeply embodied. And so we have these two fundamental, cardinal, elemental forces, perhaps the most cardinal elemental forces, coming up against each other in the zodiac at this hard stop where there's no overlap of the star signs. It's just they meet up like a wall, fire and water meeting together. And these planets, these grahas, these great archetypes, which are inside of us and outside as literal planets, literally move through this zone that is the meeting of two incompatible yet deeply intertwined elements. And so as we move from water into fire, soma, water, is offered into fire, and fire refines soma into transcendence. So this is water, bliss meeting with burning. And this brings us into some of the fundamental concepts and tenets of Shavait Tantra, of Trividya Tantra, of the mysterious energy of Kundalini as it awakens in the individualized self. So, as to circle back, we have Venus moving through the Gandanta, that is our heart chakra, moving through the Gandanta between Pisces and Aries. We'll break down what that means. And then soon we have Mars moving through the Gandanta between Cancer and Leo.
And this is so interesting the way that this is happening. And just to be clear, Mars is in Gandanta's zone already, but on the
Yeah.
Ashleisha side. So hasn't crossed but is already in the knot. Venus has crossed but is still in the knot on the fire side. So what do we have here? We have a planet that is fundamentally feminine, Venus,
Mm-hmm.
and related in that sense to water in a way, right?
And
And
related to shukra, our vital essence and reproductive tissue, which, sorry, it's wet. Our reproductive tissue and secretions, male and female, and intersex, it's gonna be wet.
right? And Venus gets exalted,
Hmm.
most powerful in Pisces, a water sign. So Venus has left exaltation in the water, is re-entering the fire, the beginning of a new cycle. So this is like, think about like men are from Mars, women are from Venus. This is very like masculine, feminine, yin yang, uh, Ida Pingala. I mean, you can think of all of
Yep,
these balancing principles, and we're getting to experience them together in all of these different ways. So we have the water and fire of the Gandanta itself. We have a feminine planet leaving exaltation, starting anew in the fire. We have a masculine planet. Mars has been debilitated at its weakest in a water sign
hmm,
in Cancer, is crossing Gandanta back into fire, where Mars is going to get a lot of strength back. Not
that's
exalted
right.
strength, but Mars is like the warrior, like the general, like the war general who reports to the sun, and he's moving into the sun's house. It's like reporting for duty. And that's after a particularly, each of these planets also spent this year, I mean, Mars has been in and out of Cancer for a long time, longest possible amount of time in their respective water, either exaltation or debilitation place. We don't usually see them hang out so long in one sign, but with retrogrades, etc., they've been there in those positions for a long, long time. So probably you're already feeling a little bit of the change somewhere at some level from the Venus transit that we're undergoing now. And in another week or so, we're about 4 or 5 days away from Mars exiting Cancer. We'll still be in Gandanta, but already on the fire side. May feel a pretty sudden shift of some layer of energy with that one too. Um, yeah, really, really interesting time. Really
Really
interesting
interesting time.
transits.
So let's I think it's time. Let's do what do you got in terms of movie, music, fashion for the Gandanta zone, the fire water polarity?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I
You
started
have
thinking
anything?
about, yeah, I've got so much stuff. I started thinking about like transitional fashion. So, like, Mars in Cancer is wearing the like hiking pants, and then it goes through Gandanta and like unzips the legs, and now they're shorts. You know?
That's good.
Right?
Super
It's
good.
like, yeah, those sunglasses. You're like glasses, and then when they're exposed to sunlight, they turn into sunglasses.
Oh yeah.
Like they like, yeah, or even better, like the ones that have like the
Oh,
clip-on
that
shades.
that flip
Yeah,
up.
and they flip down. Yeah, like that. Like another one would be like your it's like resort wear. So you have your swimsuit on, and then you have like the thing that you put over it, or like when
Yep.
swimmers get done at a swimming competition and then
Yep.
they put on like a parka. It's like you're wearing like a swimsuit and a winter jacket at the same time. Like it's kind of those energies. It's like, I had some good ones, but
Those
yeah,
are good.
those are good ones, right?
Uh-huh.
Anything that kind of is like a convertible, has like convertible
I
capacity.
had I had like when women wear those or men do also, but like the mermaid tail that you swim in.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about? Like it puts your and it like looks like a mermaid tail. You can see like videos of women, but you're at a barbecue.
Ah, okay, okay, all right. I like it. I like it. For some reason, the image I got in my mind are those like psychedelic 1970s like platform high heel shoes,
Uh,
but there's like
uh-huh.
a live goldfish in the water
Yes.
inside the
Yeah,
heel. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
totally.
Like this.
Yeah,
This is.
yeah, yeah. And for film, I'd like to give a shout out to two of my very favorite films, and it's actually a trilogy that was made. And if you haven't seen these films, I don't know where. one can see them, but they are absolutely amazing films. And they're Deepa Mehta's trilogy. She made Fire and Earth and Water, but it's Fire and Water that become the most logical here. And so, Fire, if you haven't seen it, it's the lives of two women named Radha and Sita. Of course, very famous
Mm-hmm.
characters out of the Indian pantheon from the Ramayana and then from the stories of Radha and Krishna. And they're living together in a joint family in New Delhi. And this film is all about sexuality and tapas. And they find that they're in love with each other. And it's all about fire. And, this film sparked a great deal of controversy in India, especially because of its depiction of lesbian relationships. And it's a beautiful, beautiful film. And it makes you think a lot about sexuality and desire and fire. And then the companion to that, or one of the companions, there's also Earth, but Water, it's just one of my absolute favorite films ever. It's such a beautiful film, and it's set in Varanasi, right on the banks of the Ganges River, and it's set right at the time of Indian independence, and it's about a child widow in 1942 India, and two of the other women who are widows who are living in this ashram for widows. And it's a beautiful, beautiful film. And it's just laden with imagery of water. And it really is about societal pressure and discrimination, and India right on the precipice of independence. So those are the two films that came to mind for me.
Nice. I know we don't always do a literary pick, but this
Mm.
inspired me to just throw one in. There's a French coming of age novel, and something about coming of age as a concept even is
Yes.
also very fitting for kind
Liminal
of what you just
space.
described. It's the
Yeah.
liminal space. It's a transition
Hmm.
zone.
Hmm.
Bonjour Trieste. Is it Trieste? Trieste. How do you say sadness in
Trieste.
French? Trieste.
Trieste.
Yeah, that. Have you read that book?
I haven't.
It's beautiful. I read it in French once upon a time. I could do that,
Mm.
and I've also read it in English. And it's a very simple story. It's like a daughter and her father are um, summer vacation, so they've gone to the coast. They've left Paris and they've gone to the coast. And it's kind of like she's just like laying around at the beach a lot. Which, by the way,
Mm.
the beach also very gun. The beach is a Gandanta zone.
Gandanta. It's a
The
liminal
beach
zone.
is the Gandanta. You can
And
get
what's
wet
so
and sunburned
interesting
at the same time.
is to watch
Yeah.
what people do at the beach, because they do
Hmm.
all of these things that you don't do in normal life because it is a liminal space, and people are taking
Exactly.
off their clothes and they're frolicking, and it's like this, it's an otherworldly space. It's not where we go and do business. It's not where we act
No.
normal.
No, and I mean, like we both grew up near, on the north coast of California where it's cold, but there's beaches. So like all my childhood pictures, I'm wearing like no pants and a
Yes,
sweater,
correct.
right? Because
Mine too.
you're wet, but it's cold. Like, and I mean, think about a beach too. You could have your feet in the water and be getting sunburned
Yes.
at the same time. Right?
Hmm.
So in this book, there's a lot of like just kind of flopping around on the beach and like, in the little boat, but there's enormous emotional undercurrents in this kind of
Yes.
like wretched family dynamic and
Yes.
secrets and just this
Mm.
whole coming of age working out. But the
Mm.
context is like you're just sitting there at the beach. Really, I mean, you should just read the book. It's better than that. But that's very much the energy of what we're talking about.
Love it.
Okay,
And
music.
then music. Okay, so we've talked about Morchiba before. Morchiba just came out with an amazing with a new album. It's really great. I love it. At any rate, they made two albums without Sky, who is like, it's only two people in the band, so they made two albums without one half of the band. And the two albums, they're amazing albums, even though I love Sky, and they are called Blaze Away, and
Oh
it's
yeah,
super fiery. And then they made Dive Deep,
yeah,
Dive Deep, which is water. And so those two, which came out back to back, are Gandanta albums.
definitely. Those are
Yeah, Blaze
definitely very much
Away
albums.
and Deep. Deep dive, dive deep. I've got to get it right. I've got to look it up. Um, yeah, it's
The one,
dive deep.
yeah,
Blaze away and
the,
dive deep.
those are good ones. The musical, I don't have a perfect example of this, but a genre that also came to mind to me is like ska, like contemporary ska, where they're like, okay, punk is cool, but it's a little hard. We could use a horn section.
Totally.
It's like now it's like jazz kind of like
Right.
there's a
Or
lot
I
going
know.
on like
Right. Or
what is happening?
it's like it's like when Latinx gangsters drive around bumping polka music. It's like it's always like it's such a cultural phenomena, and from my outsider perspective, it's such a strange juxtaposition because it
Mhm.
doesn't give like gangster hardness, but somehow it does.
Yeah, yeah, it's I mean juxtaposition is really the key word here. Do we have a
Right?
myth? Do we have
I
a
do.
Gandanta myth?
I have an interesting kind of short myth. So and it takes a little bit of context. So, once upon a time, long, long ago, far, far away,
In a
simultaneously,
galaxy far, far away.
thank
Uh-huh.
you, simultaneously right
Simultaneously.
now and right here inside of each of us. So, in the eastern state of India, which is now called Odisha, formerly called Orissa, there is a practice of dedicating, as throughout much of India, a practice of dedicating women to temples who would then perform ritual arts and dance. And this myth was told by one of these women in the 80s to Frederick Margolin, who was an anthropologist who actually I know I was very close with her daughter for like 15 years. Um, and one of these dedicated women, Devdasis, told, or Maharis, told Frederick Margolin this story during her research. And I think that it is very appropriate. So, in the kingdom of Orissa, which was a kingdom with a king, a princely kingdom, when there was a drought, because oftentimes the rains don't come and it's an agricultural state, and you need the rains to grow food. It was thought that there was a sadhu, a wandering yogi, a Mekadant, an ascetic who had practiced so much intense asceticism that he had generated so much inner fire, so much tapas. He was so still, so detached, had harnessed all of his sexual energy, harnessed this kundalini, which is fire, which rises upward in a triangle, that this causes the outer rains to stop. No outside rains because one single yogi has developed so much tapas that it's not going to rain on the outside because of the renunciation. And so when that would happen, according to this myth that was told to Frederick Margolin, the king would then go to the temple and get the women who had been there dedicated, who were dancers and singers, to go out and find the sadhu, the wandering ascetic, ash covered in his trance, and to seduce him. And when these devdasis, who in this myth are the soma, the nectar, the water, when they would seduce the sadhu, which of course the sadhu, he's a bit resistant because he wants to retain his semen to transform it to awaken Kundalini Shakti in this particular mythos. There are other cycles that wouldn't do that. But then when his seed spilled, when he came, rain would fall all over Orissa and all over the kingdom, and the fertility of the land would be returned. So the drought ends, and the rivers return, and Shiva and Shakti unite, and the waters fall down, and the world once again is wet with life. So that's the myth that came to mind.
Oh, I love it.
Hmm.
I love that one. I know you've told that before in other contexts. You know what came to mind as you were telling that, and I think this is a good. I think there's a few different Gandanta metaphors kind of contained within this image in my mind.
Mm,
I've never been to Burning Man, not a particular interest of mine, but I have been up to the Black Rock Desert and spent time on the playa there.
mm,
And I was with a group of people many, many years ago, maybe 15 years ago, and we were all, just camped like 50 people in a big circle with all our vehicles. And there was a gigantic storm. So it's like so incredibly hot that you can barely stand to be exposed in the sun. You have to kind of just
mhm.
move your little shade structure around. Then out of nowhere, an immense electrical storm,
Yeah.
torrential rain, nowhere for the rain to go, puddles forming, rivers running through the desert, lightning bolts striking down into the water that's collecting. I'm amazed we didn't get struck by lightning actually. Then it's hardly even sand, but like the substance of the earth turning into mud. Mud is a very Gandanta kind of energy
Yeah.
where it's like it's not fire, but it's like not actually mud, it would be like clay
Lava or
or
lava.
lava. Lava is very Gandanta-ish. It's like liquid fire. That would be the Scorpio to Sagittarius transition. That
Yes.
that's
Yeah, we
that's
could
the
talk
one.
about refinements of
Yeah.
what each Gandanta would appear like, right? Because the
Yeah. Yeah.
Revatita Ashwini is going to be a lot different than Ashlesha Tamaga, different than.
Completely different. Yeah. Anyway, rainbows emerged, and I think that that's
Mm.
also another one of those things where it's
Yes,
like you cannot have a rainbow without rain and without sun,
that's
without
right.
water and without fire, right? It's like it creates its own third thing in the
Hmm.
the combining of the elements.
Hmm.
And I just want to make a note, just kind of bringing it back to the Jyotish, is the moon moves very quickly, right? The moon, it makes a 28-day cycle essentially. There's 27 nakshatras, one per day of that cycle, and then on the 28th it returns, which means that the moon crosses through a Gandanta zone 3 times per
A
month.
month. Yes.
3 times a month. The mind, the emotions is constantly undergoing tremendous evolution,
Hmm.
right? And the fact that we live in a society that's very solarized, it's very masculine
Yes.
in that sense, and it's so incredible. If you look at what's going on in the sky, you should not expect to feel emotionally or mentally stable on a day-to-day basis. I mean, because that's just not what's happening, right? Whereas
Yeah.
other planets are, Saturn only has to experience a Gandanta zone about every 10 years, right? Jupiter maybe only every 4. Mars every
3,
6 months, maybe.
6 months. Mm.
Yeah, it takes about 2 years for Mars to return, so
Right.
whatever that is. But it's just good to recognize that we are constantly undoing karmas and then accumulating more and then undoing them again, and we're constantly going through these transitions. And so just felt like it would be good to acknowledge that in the I think
Hmm.
one great joy of studying these systems is that it helps you see that the patterns that you're experiencing as an individual are completely universal. That's the whole
Mm.
point. It's the big self and the little self. It's
That's right.
we have many, many examples of that we can start to weave in from this beautiful transition, right?
Mm.
Anyway, we got a myth, we had movie, fashion,
Also,
music. What else do
the
we need?
beautiful nighttime tantric bhakti devotional desire musical current of Sringhara Lahari would be so relevant here, especially in Raga Malkaun's. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I'll try and like post a link or something so that we can hear it. Also, you know who comes to mind here is Bjork. I don't
I
know
was gonna
exactly.
say it came to mind because I was thinking I psychically transmitted Bjork to you. When you were talking about Morchiba, I was like, there's another person who kind of represents that energy, and that would be her.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
she
And
is.
Well, and think
Mm.
about Iceland, right? We were just talking about
Gandanta
lava.
world, fire and water.
Iceland, yeah, it's literally Gandanta world. I mean, there's volcanoes, lava flowing
Hmm.
into the ocean. I mean,
Uh-huh.
that's exactly what it's like. And like, you can't live in on an icy island without the fire element, right?
Mm.
Like, you know what else that reminds me of is I actually
Mm.
traveled in Tierra del Fuego, land of
Mm.
fire, down in southern
Down in
Patagonia
right.
with somebody from Iceland. And it's
Mm.
called that. The reason
Right.
why the explorers, the
Mm.
colonizing explorers, I guess,
Right.
called it Land of Fire is because the people who indigenously lived there kept
Mm.
fires burning at all times.
Mhm.
Because if they went out, they were out. Everything was wet all the time. So they constantly burned fires. And they didn't really wear any clothes
Right.
because it was too wet.
Right.
So they just stayed close to fire source with kind of a
Mhm.
coverings like a cape, oh, like capes and cloaks, which have
Like
come out of visor. Imagine if you could put all of the fashion elements that we've talked about into like a single
trash
place.
bags.
Trash bags, yeah, transitional glasses. We had all kinds of things. Anyway, um, how do we put a cap? We can't like put a cap on a Gandanta. Uh,
Well,
there's
I think that we can say that, we have to surrender. And
mhm,
through Gandanta, we can let things fall apart. Just like,
mhm,
because that's what happens. I mean, this is the river crossing. This is the river Styx, from
yeah,
one land to another.
yeah.
It's a river of death. It's a fire of rebirth. We're always water into fire. River of death, fire of rebirth. This is phoenix energy. Down, down, down into the cave, into the water, up, 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 fire, right?
Mhm.
So, uh, fire offerings, water offerings, ancestral prayers, and anything for these particular Gandantas. Hypnosis would be really good for the Mars Gandanta moving from Ashlesha into Maga. Oil massage, abhyanga, silence, breath retention, all of these things, because that point between inhalation and exhalation, point between exhalation and inhalation, are internal Gandanta points, internal liminal spaces that hold before we're rebirthed through each inhalation, each exhalation is a cycle of birth and death, of fire and water.
I
Yeah?
love that.
Okay,
Beautiful. Well,
good.
let's
And
leave them on that note.
yeah,
Okay.
and also the gods are often reborn under the water. And we also are reborn under the water and into the fire. Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya.
See you next week.
See you next week.